Oh no, it's Emily Wood. Emily Wood. You want later.
Don't peek too early. No, that comes later.
Spoil the joke. No, it's all right because you didn't hear it, so it's all right. Welcome to the programme, 4020 Live. It is the 14th of April. Wow.
And again, there was going to be 3.
Yeah, but
the press release hasn't come out yet. Oh, we can't keep using that, hasn't it? It's true.
Yeah.
It should have been out Friday lunchtime.
Can we say it then? Or do we have to still wait for... Someone who used to be on the programme will be back soon, and you can add the dots together to work out why they're going to be back.
He was here, then he had to leave because he would have been compromised by the position, and then the position isn't a position, so he's coming back, but not until it's officially announced he can come back. I think we just announced it.
Compromising positions. I feel like it used to be on Channel 5, don't look it up. We haven't got a chair yet, have we? Welcome to 4020 Live, I said that, haven't we? We still haven't got a chair. There's no chair. There's no chair of Rugby Football League.
No. That's what the press
right,
release is all about.
Yeah.
It's all, who's the chair, who's the board.
Surely the coup people, having kicked out Simon Johnson, of which there are...
Several.
All these pages here in the magazine for you to digest on him. When they decided to kick him out, you'd have thought they'd have known that due to how we are uniquely funded by Sport England and television, that if you're involved in a club... I mean, I didn't know this, but I don't need to know this, because if you've been involved in a club in the last 12 months as a director or whatever, you're not allowed to be on the board.
You're not deemed to be independent.
No. You had to sit on that interview for a few weeks, didn't you? Because you spoke to him...
About 3 weeks.
Yeah. That's the perils of magazine publishing and deadlines and such. But
well, I think we knew that one was going to be pretty much exclusive, so it's interesting.
You pleased with what you got out of it? An honest man says honest story about what happened?
I think it's up to people to judge what they think of what he says. But I think the bit that I think is significant is that it's over 3,000 words, so it's long form, it's in depth. You can develop an argument, and I just think that makes it interesting, because it's not like, what do you think of that? Let's move on to something else. So I think it's from his point of view, it's a cogent argument as to what he feels his time as the chair of the RFL has delivered, why he thinks there's been change, and where he thinks there are some flaws in the argument of the people that want change. I think it's quite a detailed explanation, but it's his side of that story. We will endeavour to get the other side, if there is, or the other sides,
like a rhombus or a dodecahedron.
But it was nice that he felt that he wanted to give it to us, and I think we felt that we could do it justice. So.
We've got a chip on our shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Claire Balding said it, and no one disagrees with Claire Balding.
People are writing to the Independent because we've got a chip on our shoulder.
People read TV guides anymore.
We have no sense of humour. And sadly, the Independent turned out to be correct when it underplayed the preview of Castleford versus Lee. But start with the good news.
What's the good news?
Second test sold out.
Oh, there's two out of three now.
Everton has sold out within minutes of the tickets going on general sale. The remaining, I think it was 1,500 tickets were snapped up. Sell out at Everton. If you haven't got your ticket, it's too late.
So what are people going to moan about now?
It's great though, isn't it?
Yeah. Must be making a few quid on that as well. And
you'd hope so, but it's now pushing everybody to Wembley. Yeah. If they haven't got a ticket and they want one, and to be fair, that's going to be sensational. First test of the series at Wembley. I think there's going to be pushing maybe 65,000, 70,000 people there, and it just shows you with a proper ticketing policy, with a I think whatever Simon Moran normally does with his music tickets we've used that model. That's clearly worked. We haven't gone down the World Cup route of saying that the stadium is full and then getting there and finding it's only half full because the corporate didn't pick up the tickets they could have had as part of a deal. So all of that has led to FOMO, I believe it's called, which I thought was a washing powder, but
I'm trying to think. '97 Super League Test Series, did we play at Wembley then?
97.
Because I know we
no.
played. No.
It
So
was
it would be
all in North
95 then.
London.
The World Cup
Yeah.
in 95 would have been the last time you could see England stroke Britain versus Australia
Yeah.
in the capital.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's a long time. That's a
Don't
long
leave
time.
it as long, but scarcity sells. Remember that when you're seeing the same fixtures over and over again this season,
Well, like last week.
like last week,
When I asked,
and it's happening again with the Challenge Cup semi-finals and league fixtures.
and the 1895 Cup. When I asked Darryl Powell about the fixture computer, I said, where is this computer? He says, where is the computer?
It's in Canada.
What is this computer? Where is the computer? They used to, there's a documentary, one of the ESPN documentaries. They used to the baseball schedule, which is I think they all play 168 games or something ridiculous. It was done by hand by some people until the computers take over. So we need to get those people in to do the Super League fixture list, as opposed to Darryl Powell's computer, which he's not happy with. Where is the computer?
Apparently, when all the clubs request certain things, it fills the grid in, and then you can only go with what's left for your repeat fixtures, which is why some of them turn up. That's the official explanation.
See, the problem with asking someone a question in a press conference is people can report on it straight away. So I had to rush that video out and find some pictures of Commodore 64s to put on the internet to claim ownership of my amazingly brilliant question, which wasn't, when's Max Jowett back? How's Mason Lino? That kind of thing. My best bit is the hit in the magazine. This is according to Ian. Is the hit piece on him.
Yes.
The best bit in the magazine is the joke I've just realised I wrote.
I think Ian has realised that the reader's letter was partly directed towards him, and what we say on here quite a lot.
Don't let the readers write the magazine. Well, I guess it saves you less.
It was a very cogent and coherent argument that we feel like we'd like to express alternative opinion.
Got the Super League hit flask on the desk, which has been here for I just put it to the front today. This will be part of the Rugby League Antiques Roadshow series I'm going to do soon. Phil says we need 70,000 at Wembley. I think there's a good chance.
I think we're getting there. I think they're not far off 60 at the moment. I don't think some of the marketing that they've got planned to the Australian audience, which is built around London's rebrand, which has been delayed by a month, it's all tied in with that. I think get people involved with the game. Get them to Wembley, get them to London Broncos games, or if they're
London
Broncos
Bulldogs,
by then.
Bulldogs.
Shame it was supposed to be tomorrow. I should have been in London tomorrow, but
I know you know.
can't go.
Is it just dotting I's and like the Castlewood takeover? Is it just things to be?
I suspect they just weren't finally in a position to announce things they wanted to announce. Now, whether that's been put back just to do exactly that, or whether it's we need to work to find some other people to get involved to get it over the line, a bit like what's happening at Salford.
If Canterbury had known, they could have sent Tom Amon there instead of to allegedly Castleford.
If indeed it is Canterbury, but.
I only go by what I've read in the chicken wing because
Well, Phil Gould, I'm sure will have a lot to say if it's Canterbury.
Good old Gus.
He did mention a fair bit about them having been approached, but
I know Phil listened to the Gus Gould podcast, so I didn't have to. So he wants to use the Super League the English Super League as they always call it, because they're Australians. I know we're on a radio station which is going out around the world, but they know. As a development platform for NRL players, as if that wasn't one already. Send us your kids today from the Super Queensland Cup and whatever.
But also, we send our best to them anyway. So they're the finishing school.
All the legends of Rugby League, they're all there in the National Rugby League. Should mention, because I didn't mention it at the end of last week's programme, because people messaged about it, and I didn't mention it because it hadn't been confirmed at that point. Derek Whitehead, passed away, former Leinster Trophy winner. And I know people had heard about it at that point yesterday, but last week rather, been confirmed. And you don't want to eulogise people who might still be around. So,
yep.
And they paid tribute to him ahead of the game on Saturday, which we'll come to in a bit.
Yeah. Tom Amon's coming back
to Hull KR via Castleford.
So we believe. We think for certain Hull KR 2026. I think he is going on loan somewhere. Castleford would be it would be great for them. It's exactly what they need. But that's yet to be confirmed. The participants in the Wheelchair World Cup will be confirmed, but not until after we've gone off air. So we. But
is there any? Will it upset anyone who's in there or not in there? Rather?
Well, 6 nations will be confirmed and 2 qualifying places. So that's good.
Why do you always talk in riddles? Says trust no one. Do we? I think if you solve the riddles, you can find out what's happened.
You've got to have a little bit of reading between the lines.
Yeah, there's like 2 levels to this programme. There's all the stuff we're allowed to say and all the stuff we can't say.
We do the quick crossword and the cryptic at the same time.
Liz says, do we know who is in the Wood and Beaumont gang side and who is in the Moran gang? It's like Wigan and Warrington versus everyone else, isn't it? That's the because they're going to be in NRL Europe. Wigan, Warrington, Paris, Catalans, Toulouse, Milan, Madrid, and
Benidorm,
and the Red Mad Squirrels of Prague, or wherever they're from.
There's a lot of information out there at the moment, which is coming from various sources who want that information to be out there. It doesn't make a coherent picture at the moment. You can read some things into statements that you're reading, particularly from Australia. There are certain media outlets that are jockeying for position because the broadcasting deal is starting to be talked about. And the people that work in those media organisations or have the ear of those organisations are tending to get things out there that they want to be out there. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. In the same way that it doesn't necessarily mean it's true that a gang of people are looking to get rid of French clubs from competition over here.
But what will we ask Steve McNamara every week if it's not about that?
We don't know what recommendations will be made by the strategic review at the moment. But they are asking questions. Now, just because a question is being asked doesn't mean it's a policy decision. But it creates copy, doesn't it? I think what we do know is that the NRL have now firmly admitted that they are in talks with this side of the world to do something to prop up the game. Now, who they're talking to and about what, I think we're in the very initial stages of. So whether it's these teams are included and have expressed an interest and those teams are wanted and not sure at that level of detail at the moment. What we do know is that they are on the verge of starting broadcast negotiations and having a Northern Hemisphere interest to give extra content to a broadcaster might be quite valuable. I think we also know, if it's, again, it comes from a certain side of the media over there, it would appear there's a lot of interest in international rugby league at the moment, more than there's ever been, which is possibly going to manifest itself in a television deal for the next World Cup. And that television deal will have the 3 or 4 people who are interested in bidding for the NRL coming forward to say, well, if you're insisting that we take on this as well, we might want to do that because then it puts us in prime position to get the products that we really want, which is the NRL on a weekly basis. So I think there's a fair chance that we might get a decent broadcast deal for the 2026 World Cup, which is excellent news.
Manifestation. I understand this is a great technique that people use these days to, whether it's jobs or relationships or whatever. So we'll all manifest what we want to happen to rugby league, and maybe it will happen. If it doesn't, we'll blame Noel Edmonds or something. Well, that's Cosmic Aldrin. That's
There's a lot of machinations still to unfold.
Paul says you can get a lot of information in the Daily Mail, but let's face it, the chances of it being right are about as likely as much of the RL media. Well, that's a bit harsh. That's a bit harsh, Paul. There, I mean, we're part of that blob of information somehow. Got media passes and everything.
But we don't report on other media organisations.
No.
Which does seem to be the norm of the way journalism is going.
Not yet. But, you won't believe what John Wilkins said this week. I don't know what he said, but I'll read it somewhere else. Good evening, says Carsten. Good evening. Guten Abend. Welcome to the podcast. Is that all the good news then? We've sold loads of tickets.
It's good news.
Yeah.
And there might be a television deal for the next World Cup, and we're moving along the road for Wheelchair World Cup qualification. That's all good news.
The PDRL World Cup's going to be announced at some point, which might be somewhere foreign.
PDRL season starts this weekend. Great news.
We've got a new cup to play for. I need
festival.
to edit that interview, so that'll be up at some point.
That's good. James King, PDRL superstar, is featured in the magazine. His life in league. I'm trying to think of other good news.
I'm sure there has been some other good news because there's loads of stuff going on. There's lots of boring transfers and stuff.
We've had the 1895 Cup semi-final draw.
Solon will play Featherstone, having played them yesterday.
Yep.
And York will play Bradford at the LNER.
Yep. So that's good. I think they're going to be two great semi-finals, both with stories, which is excellent.
See, Oldham have never been to Wembley or never won.
Oldham have never been to
Wembley. Even when they were winning titles in the 50s.
Never got to Wembley.
And obviously Bradford and York and Featherstone have all been at Wembley in various stages in the last few years in different guises and whatever. But
they have. Other than that, we're going to have to touch on some things that are less savoury, like what's happening at Salford.
Well, let's get Salford.
What's happening with the women's game?
Let's get Salford out of the way. Well, the women's game that's just I think we can talk about that as well. But Salford.
Yes.
So you were there.
I was
watching on the telly. I thought Wilkin and Carney were brilliant in their questionnaire of Chris Irwin. Chris Irwin, isn't that his name? And I feel sorry for him because obviously he's been put in this position to run an absolute basket case of a rugby league club.
I just think it needed more. It needed longer with it. Because again, it's headline. It's like machine gun questioning, instant response, move on to the next one, and the questions were brilliant because they were exactly what needed to be asked. But you couldn't develop an answer and then go back to that question and question it. Yeah, you'd moved on to the next one. I having now been to Salford again, but been to Salford the first time when the deal's all done, everything's great.
Yeah.
You know,
parading the players and all that.
Here's our previous owner delivering the match ball, all that kind of stuff. To then go sort of 5 weeks later when there's a pall over the club because it's not moved on and
they might not pay the wages.
It was never at that point. You do see it slightly differently, but a couple of things struck on the way home when you're trying to make sense of what's happening. One is you cannot fault the Salford fans. The ones that are still going, they're still paying their whatever it is to go to a game there, or they bought season tickets in good faith, like Hull fans did last year in good faith. You can't fault with the greatest respect to the team that they put out. They were never going to win that game. It was a question of by how many they were going to lose it. And they did really well in the first half because they stayed in the game, even though physically they weren't as big as their opposition, and that was going to tell. But they stayed and they supported, and you had nothing but admiration for that. So I tried to think about why are we at the impasse that we're at, and whose fault is it? Having seen the Irwin interview, having spoken, then I got the chance to speak to Tony Sutton, who'd already done the Sky interview that came in and then did a press interview, which was basically a straight bat. He couldn't really say very much, didn't really say very much. And you start to ask yourself, where does the fault in all of this lie? So you look at the owners and you say, their imperative is to buy a stadium and the land surrounding it that has a huge commercial value. What they're not contracted to do at this moment is support an ailing team that's been very badly run for however long it's been badly run for economically. It's been successful, but clearly it's been badly run. Badly run on two fronts in that that success has meant they've overspent and never cleared the debt. So the debt becomes more of a noose around the club's neck. They haven't really invested in reserves and academy. They're now starting to move in that direction, and they're doing some really good work with, Africa. They're trying to help out in Ghana, and they're doing something with the Copperheads in Florida. The aim is to do things right, but they're only just setting up reserves and academy. But that's come back to haunt them now because they really needed reserves and academy. The players that they're bringing in are trying their very best, but they're not at that level. But I was thinking about it's like if you want to buy a house, and the house you want to buy, the roof's leaking, and you haven't yet had the survey on the house, so you can't buy it, and you're putting questions to the surveyor who's giving you some reasons where there might be some faults in the house. But could you pay for the roof to be mended before you've actually had your bid accepted for the house? And you'd go, well, why would I pay for the roof to be mended if I don't end up getting a house in the end anyway? Because until I can agree a price with you and we can take into account that I want to pay for this and I don't want to pay for it. Now, that's where I think the owners have been a bit... Their approach has not been great in terms of what they've said to the players and what they've promised and not delivered on. But I really don't think they want to put money into a rugby club until they know they can get their asset. And there is the Salford Football Club that they could bring into that asset that would probably give as much, if not more, return than the rugby league club that's currently there. So it's a harsh reality that they're really not interested in the rugby league club. They would be if it was holding its own and paying for itself, but they're not going to bail something out until they know that they have got an asset that they can exploit. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's the commercial world that we live in. Why it's taking so long to negotiate with the council, that's a question that I don't think's been asked, that needs to be. So I don't know how this rolls forward. We do know that the RFL, if necessary, will prop up the club for the remainder of the year by paying whatever necessary wages they need to if the owners either move away or keep defaulting, because they have to have a Salford team in Super League this year. The cost of them not having it is greater than propping it up. So Salford will exist in Super League for the remainder of this season. It's an impasse that can only be broken, presumably, by negotiation between the council and new owners. They're not the people that are being questioned. You know, Chris Irwin is an employee. And whatever he's told to say, he will say. I don't feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for the fact that he's been given duff information. And he's had to be the public face of it. But nobody's interviewing the council, as far as I can see, and saying what's holding this up. And if it's that they don't want to give you enough money, then you know how. At the moment, it's on a tangent. The NRL are trying to get into Western Australia, and the issue is not that there is going to be a team in Perth in the NRL. The issue is how much are the Western Australia government going to put into this project, whereby they will get an NRL team in their city, and are they going to pay for academies? Are they going to pay for junior grassroots development? Are they going to pay towards... I think they don't operate in the way we do, that I've got to pay for teams to come to them. Yeah. But what are they going to do to alleviate the fact that the game itself doesn't have to pay for Perth to be there, that it becomes profit making in its own right? And the argument at the moment is not that there's going to be a Perth, it's what they're going to pay. And the NRL want this much and Perth want to give this much, and the answer's somewhere in the middle, and within the next couple of weeks it'll probably be announced that they found the right compromise and it's going ahead. That's the questions that haven't been asked of the Salford situation. If the council are here and the owners are here, where do we get to the bit in the middle, and how long is that going to take? That's a long answer to what was a less than illuminating 80 minutes of rugby league.
Well, we'll get onto that shortly. Well, not shortly. We'll leave it very short to talk about.
James McDonald scored 5 tries. He should have had 5.
Phil says asking Perth for 300 million. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that could buy Salford 300 million times over. Ian's mentioned the bit about they're not interested about the club, interested in the stadium. That says it all.
But then I can understand why they wouldn't be interested in a club that is a loss-making business at the moment. You're not going to spend a lot of time and energy trying to bail that out and save it until you know that the reason that you want it in the first place is secure. I can sort of understand that from their point of view.
They're business people.
I don't understand why it's taking so long, or what the blockage is, or how you then who gets the plunger to solve the blockage. But I just think by saying it's black there and it's white there, the only people who are emerging with any degree of credit, apart from the Salford players, are the fans.
when he went on TV and said the costs were unsustainable, whatever the quote was, I put it on Twitter. I can't remember what exactly the quote was, and I thought, so how did we end up in this position? So I don't know what the fit and proper persons test ensues or includes.
Mr. Johnson relates a bit of that in there about what the clubs wanted the governing body to be able to do, not with Salford but in general, and what the club needs to do itself. And he goes into a bit of detail about Salford, which I don't need to mention in here. If you need it, it's there. But the truth is, the fit and proper person test is to do with evidence of funding, and they have provided that. What they haven't done is release that funding. But that's not a governance issue.
Would anyone who has been involved in Salford's demise pass a future fit and proper person test to be a director of a rugby league club when they've driven Salford?
The real problem they've got is that if this all falls through, it will revert back to those directors.
Because we're in that position again where you look at the Bradford thing and you go, well, why didn't we have an inquiry into that? Because we know why. But why aren't we doing the same here? Because, again, we need to know what's happened so we can try and prevent it in the future. I mean, the simple answer is they spent money they didn't have.
Yeah.
And that's an easy thing to avoid. Now, if you're Castleford, who we assume aren't spending the cap, or haven't in the past, we know Wakefield, when they were relegated, didn't spend the cap and were relegated because of that.
We know that Hull weren't last year.
I know...
We certainly know London weren't when they were in Super League.
Having worked at Wakefield briefly pre-COVID and seeing how on a shoestring things were run, but professionally, not run like an amateur team or whatever, they were run professionally, but on a strict budget.
With costs cut.
You can do that and be a professional club.
But what you can't be is successful.
But Salford haven't been successful.
But they've got to a grand final, and they got to and they got to the playoffs last year, and they had 11,000. I think again the RFL looked at the potential that Salford have is the 11,000 people that were at the playoff game with Lee last year, and said there is a viable club here. If all of the stars align, there are enough people that will support it. There are, it is in a strategically important area for the sport. It's worth us trying to do whatever we can to save it. But I think the issues are, and the blame should lie not just with the owners who may or may not be dragging their feet. We don't know the details of the deal that they're trying to put together. It may be with the council. The council's obligation is to protect the ratepayers of the borough, and
there should be a lot of questions asked about previous deals.
Well, and the problem with that is that very few people in that borough support rugby league. As witnessed by the Salford crowd. So they've got to be careful that they don't, give away an asset for next to nothing for a very small proportion of their population. But the blame also has to lie with the Salford club and the way it's been run. So it's complicated, and I came away from Salford thinking there isn't an easy. You grill the CEO. It's about time that somebody did go front and centre. We know Ryan Briley's been interviewed by Sky today, and he's given it more from the player's perspective, from the mental health aspect. Vitally important. Absolved of blame. That the team that played on Thursday night could not have done any more other than Jade Nikarima, who I think was playing for Leeds. A very, very strange performance. He knew he had a young winger outside him and kept tossing balls into touch. Hello? Possession was going to be at a premium for Salford. They needed to hold the ball for as long as they could, and the number of times he gave it away early in the tackle count in their own half, bizarre. But the players completely absolved, the fans absolutely, and you never want to see a club going through that. But the club, the council and the owners, the answer lies within those three. It isn't simple.
Paul's mentioned the road network. Maybe that's what the council are dealing with. Maybe
it could be. I know one of the issues with the Odsal redevelopment was that it was stipulated that there had to be a new road off the M606 into the stadium. But that wasn't covered by the stadium development, and it was, the council are going to have to pay. And the council go, well, we don't have £1.5 million to
pay
put a
for
road in.
social care.
Yeah,
and stuff.
we're not going to do it. And it's issues like that can scupper a deal.
I don't want to say Wakefield were lucky, because obviously it took some hard work from the people who were negotiating the deal, but when Newmarket was on the table, and I don't know what you'd call it, the deal was in place where if that was built, they had to build a stadium, and then they didn't, but they had to put money to pay for whatever, and you see where that ends. And it's the same, Salford in the same position as if Matt Ellis was from Salford, maybe they would be in the position where they now. If he was from Castleford, maybe Castleford would be.
Absolutely.
So it's all dumb luck, a lot of it. But again, as you say, the questions
you've got
to
almost take it back to the owners that had the club when they decided to sell the Willows.
Yeah.
The deal that they got was always going to hamstring the club. Marwan Kukash comes in, promises the earth, spends a load of money,
Big check.
but there was nothing there. There was no foundation to it. Then he leaves, and there's debt, and how it becomes then a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And some people still think he's a saviour. The thing that is getting me about Salford at the minute, and it's again, I understand the players are trying or whatever, and this and that and the other.
I don't think they can do any more.
No, but we've got to get past this. Aren't they brave thing? Because they are professionals. They are being. I said they're being paid to play. You know what I mean by that. I'm talking literally, but it almost takes it away from every team that's beating them at the moment, apart from Huddersfield. That they're just an easy beat team.
I also think that Ryan Briley says in his interview today that Callum Watkins had got to the point for his mental health where he had to move, and nobody holds that against him. And that's an issue that we haven't spoken enough about. That's why you need a really strong players' union. And if there are mental health issues, and if academy players are being thrown into a first-team environment long before they should be, and at the potential of suffering, damage for doing that, there's a duty of care issue. Then maybe they shouldn't be playing at the moment.
And I say it again, I can't understand how the players' union or whatever it was last year was so upset about players being banned for breaking the rules, but they're saying sod all on this.
Do we have a players' union?
It's easy to spend money if you're prepared to take on that. It's just the charlatans won't pay it back, says Paul. Phil wants us to move on from Salford. We'll move on. Apart from mentioning the game.
It's just having been
happened this week.
I felt that I had a bit more of a feel for what was going on. I apologise to Phil.
The game was rubbish, wasn't it? I mean,
apart from James McDonald.
The great thing is, and I used to complain that the Super League show on a Monday night was pointless because they show you highlights of Thursday's game well out of date. So we don't need to go through Leeds and Salford because it
wasn't rubbish. You always knew who was going to win that game. Yeah. It was a question of by how much.
It was a game on TV.
For Leeds, the big thing was that they nilled an opponent, and you should never decry that in Super League.
Leeds need to find consistency. Salford need to find whatever, and we haven't necessarily learned anything that we didn't know before that game.
No.
But did Jake Connor do something good? I can't remember.
Yeah, he set up a couple of tries. I think Leeds are a top 6 team this year, which is an improvement on their last 2 years. I hope Paul Rowley doesn't get disenchanted with the situation at Salford, and he's another one who seems to be emerging with honour from a dishonourable situation.
Leeds Rugby League journalist says Leeds to finish in top 6.
Absolutely.
That's what it'll say on the internet.
Yeah.
Question for Phil, says Adam. Is there anything contractually that prevents the bigger clubs from breaking away from Super League and the RFL and setting up a new competition with the RFL? Well, the NRL was the ones who was going to set up Ultimate Rugby, weren't they? But I don't name them because they get in trouble. So
they own their own intellectual property, so they could do that.
A bit like cricket, where you've got the 100 and then you've got all these other things, and the Wheelchair Premier League was going to be set.
I think I've been looking a little bit into the foundation of the Premier League, which again became a battle between the top clubs and the Football League the FA at the time, and the FA and the Football League being antagonistic organisations at the time, and 2 broadcasters wanting the product at that time, and it's the top clubs that can leverage the competition. So yes, they could if they wanted to, but it would be purely dependent on what they were getting in return.
Millions and millions of pounds.
Well, you've got to assume that there are millions and millions of pounds there, and somebody's prepared to pay it. And at the moment, that doesn't exist. But yes, it could.
So Leeds take on Huddersfield on Friday in rivals round, and Salford play Catalans on Saturday evening.
The only danger with calling it rivals round is that not all of them are rivals.
Well, that's why when Sky put the video on at half time of the games, and there was no like Salford and Catalans having fights and stuff. It's just, well, it's that clip of
And they played it, and they played each other last week.
Yeah, it's that Andy Fowler clip
in the Challenge Cup.
Yeah, and bring back don't have fighting, but here's Paul Sculthorpe and Andy Fowler having a fight. Yeah, before it was Andrew.
They couldn't find any pictures of Albert Rosenfeld playing Leeds.
Has Leeds Huddersfield ever been? Is that when it was a rivalry? Or
probably about that time they played in a championship final, and I think when Huddersfield had their team of all talents around the First World War. The only other thing of note, I think, in Leeds Huddersfield fixtures recently is the
Reinhold try.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't wheel that out.
They will on Friday. Well, it's not even it's on the red button, isn't it? So they might not. Join us on Friday live on YouTube from whenever the first game starts until the end of Leeds Huddersfield.
Midday.
And get delirious. Yeah,
the whole
it's going to
day.
do the whole day. It's going to do the whole day. I don't know why. We're just going to do it. Championship on Friday. Hunslet 12, Halifax 46. Halifax continue their great run. Hunslet, well, they got promoted from League One. Mm-hmm. It's going to always be tough for them. So, and Tara Jones referee. That's the news. Is woman referees rugby match.
We said it last week that there hasn't been enough credit for the job that Kyle Eastman's done as a novice coach to be unbeaten in that division, which everybody's saying is as competitive as we hoped it would be. So again, another scalp for Halifax. They apparently are aggressive in defence, and their attack. They have about 3 or 4 attacking patterns that they use. They haven't got like multiple, but they do it really well.
6 from 6, and they're not in the 1895 Cup. So get a break as well. So
well done, Halifax.
That might be important.
Or Huddersfax, as they may well become.
Huddersfax Giant Panthers socks. Hull KR 12, Wigan 28. So I was at work on Friday and I couldn't watch Saints and Wakefield because I don't subscribe to Super League Plus, and Sky Sports Plus is a nightmare on a laptop. So I had this on in the corner while I was working. The first thing that I noticed was here's the England coach Sean Wayne talking about England wearing a Wigan jacket, and I thought I could have got him a different jacket. You know, it's just. I know it's a minor thing, but it's just it's image. You know, Hull KR not in control, but they're in the lead.
No, they were half time 12-6. You thought, really good half.
I've tipped Hull KR by 2, so he's looking good. And then Wigan.
Joe Burgess, a spectacular acrobatic try.
Was he on the right wing or the left wing again this week? And Wigan come back in the second half, and they were like the Wigan of last year.
I agree with Willie Peters that I think the final scoreline was a little bit flattering. But 22-0 in the second half to Wigan tells you that that was an ultra determined performance that has got them in the right space for playing Saints on Friday. And anybody who was writing them off after a couple of defeats shouldn't. That clearly they're not fully clicking yet. But, great to see Brad O'Neill back. He's going to take a little bit of time to get back to the form that he was. He was emerging as England's most likely hooker. Not sure Sam Walters is a prop. I know he's big, and he certainly there was heavy involvement, but I think he is a second rower. And Adam Kieran missing probably more than they thought he would in the centres, but great try from Jake Wardle, 2 pieces of brilliance from Bevan French to set up tries. I don't think it derails Hull KR. It's one of
it's one.
They're nearly there, but the benchmark they're trying to get to, they now know they're not quite there yet. They were really unfortunate to lose McAlorum, because I think they had a plan of how they wanted to play, which involved Jeslitten being in the halves and perhaps going to hooker part way through the game, but not that early, and then not being able to properly change that because McAlorum couldn't come back. So I don't think Hull KR will be too worried. They were coming off the derby in the cup, Wigan had a week off. I think that told in the latter stages of the game. But no, it was really enjoyable as a neutral.
Ian's mentioned
and a great atmosphere.
Yeah, Ian's mentioned that week off as well. And then, of course, they'll have another week off for the semi and another week off for the final, which Saints will have as well, which could be an advantage going down the road. Of course, they all want, I asked Paul Wellens about this last week, they all want to be in the final, but they're not. So, it gives them a chance to rest some bones. Kevin says Wigan showed that championship class in the last 20 minutes. Wigan are still the team to beat, says Phil. So the anti-Penrith Panthers, because they are the team being beaten in the NRL at the moment. Wigan, of course, still the world champions as we speak.
The interesting thing about Penrith, to again tangentially, because this is what we do.
It's all related.
It's really interesting that teams that have won fully professional competitions for 4 years are struggling in the fifth. So it happened to Saints, happened to Manchester City. I know we're not comparing like we're like with those two, but is 4 years the span of a team in a fully professional competition, particularly a salary cap one, before you've lost too many of your top players? Some of the players who are at the latter stages of their career have retired. I think sometimes the entitled letter that is in the magazine, you become an apologist for teams that have been brilliant and then drop off the perch. It can't be coincidence that it's happening to 3 or 4 of them when they're hitting that same benchmark. So yeah, Penrith, if Parramatta had won this week, which clearly they're probably not going to do for the remainder of the season, would have been bottom of the league after 6 rounds.
A couple of comments from a couple of polls. Paul, going back to the Salford Leeds game, best thing about it was Wilkin pushing that McDonald is mostly a defensive player, even after he had scored 4 tries. And obviously, to keep the nil, as you say. And another poll on the Hull KR Wigan game had a real playoff feel to it. The battle between Nsemba and Hadley was fantastic. I love watching Junior Nsemba. And Dean Hadley, who had a spell at Wakefield a few years back, a player you always know he's going to go out there and give you everything. And that's what you want.
You're not going to win a trophy unless you've got somebody like a Dean Hadley in your team. And every team that's been successful, you pick out the star names. There's always somebody in there, from my point of view, a Carl Ablett type figure that does the job, that upsets the opposition so that the stardust can then be sprinkled. And Dean Hadley is that player for Hull KR. Yeah, brilliant.
So we're not writing off Hull KR then after?
Nope, no way whatsoever.
And it wasn't Jack Smith's fault, was it?
I thought he refereed really, really well. Got most of the big decisions right. Explained it brilliantly. Again, if you can have a little bit of banter, the great comment when Hadley and Nsemba were squaring up to each other was, "You want to fight with him?" It's like, that's brilliant.
Catch weight contest.
That's what you want.
I blame a lot of things on the things we glorify. Now, it's rivals round. So as I mentioned, we're talking about Farrell and Sculthorpe. We're talking about Baz and Stuart Field.
Yeah, but we can't sell that anymore. And that's not what the game is. We're trying to have, head injury assessments. We're trying to look after the players because we know of the effects of stuff like that. Why do we keep playing it? That's not what we're about anymore, because we can't be about that.
Out of context, the Mick Morgan clip is very funny. I've seen people use it on Twitch. They stream about computer games and they play it because someone calling someone a bottleless get is funny.
It's transcended what he originally wanted.
And now when anyone thinks of Kelvin Skerritt, that's all they can think of in our world.
But comedic value.
But no one, outside of rugby league, no one knows what it is. But inside, we understand the context of everything. And I always thought, and I've said it on this programme, and I think we used it too much as humour, because when it comes down to it, it's criticising match officials. And we're not supposed to do that. And last week the RFL did the respect thing again, didn't they? So, which almost was that just before the people were banned for abusing referees. So it's like, here's the precursor, and now we're going to ban everyone. So I've been in broadcasting since 2002. It's amazing. Haven't been found out yet. I always say that. And one of the things you can do, having worked on local radio for most of that, everyone knows who I support. It's never been a secret. But you can easily report on matches involving your team and not report as a fan, because you're doing a professional job, and it's easy enough to do because you're a professional. I covered the original £1 million game, which wasn't worth £1 million. And people wouldn't have known, well, people would have known I was a Wakefield supporter, but I was not biased towards Wakefield in my description of what happened in that game against Castleford. I understand people want if they're listening to local radio, I don't understand why they want a biased commentary, but apparently they do. If they listen to a club commentary, they want everything to be on their side. And that's fine. You can do that. You can do that easily without bringing into question the referee costing you a match or a decision.
Yep.
It's very easy not to blame a referee when you're doing a commentary. Mm-hmm. It's almost a crutch just to say, would you say the same about one of your star players dropping the ball? You probably wouldn't, especially not if you're working for the club. And I think clubs need to realise that, and it's not a new thing, because we've seen it time and time again over the last few years with people on social media criticising match officials and so on and so forth, and seemingly nothing happens of it. You can't do it. Can you imagine?
Not when you're the official club video. You can't do it.
If you're a podcast, you can do it. If you're a podcast,
yeah, but that's sanctionable, I think. And the other thing about that is, if you genuinely think that your team has lost because of that, then you're not taking into account the context of the game. Wigan deserved to win that game. It was nothing to do with Jack Smith.
I listen to some club podcasts, and they're extremely... What's the politically correct term for one-eyed? Because that's probably not political, but you know what I mean. They're very much myopic. Yeah. They are myopic. And they say things about match officials that are beyond the pale. But they're probably funny, so it's okay. But they're not pertaining to be an official spokesperson of the club, or they haven't got accreditation or whatever. So it's context again.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
And actually, the club needs to take action before the governing body does.
You can't defend it, I'm afraid. That's how good Sir Alex was, says Kevin. Alex who? 18 years of success when he had to rebuild a successful side about 4 times, which is we've seen with Leeds.
But he didn't win every year. There is a finite, there has to be a building process within that 18 years.
Kevin says Brian McDermott will be locked up now for some of the elbows he tackled with. Oh, it's a bit harsh.
Well, I don't know. He wouldn't be locked up. He'd be spending even longer in front of the judiciary.
How many penalty points would he got? Was it Bradford and Warrington Academy players getting 32 points or something? What?
For a brawl.
Which is more than some teams will get in the league. 32 points for a game no one saw. Now I want to see this. Where's my clickbait website showing me video evidence of this brawl? I want to see this brawl. 32 points. No one's been banned this week, have they?
Yes, Mikulecki.
Mikulecki's been banned. Oh, because we're not playing for shoulder charges until we are playing for shoulder charges now. We could have asked the other, but he's not here. So
well, we're storing up some questions for him, I think.
I mean, we haven't got to Castle Lee yet, and that's full of... is it 10 to 7 already?
Is it?
Yeah. Hello, if you're listening on rugbyleague.com. ZZ Top on the way in a bit. Are they? Is that the kind of thing you
think they still exist, yeah.
So Helens 26, Wakefield 14. Paul Wellens, tactical genius, because he's moved, not Wendell Saylor, Tristan Saylor.
To fullback.
To fullback, which everyone tells me he's a fullback. I don't know anything, you see, so they say he's a fullback, that Tristan Saylor. He's been moved there. Lomax is injured, so Wells moves into the halves. George Whitby, who's the future star of rugby.
Player of the match.
Future England half, but I don't want to say that because we've got a bad reputation on this programme. Jordan Lilly and what's he called? Deck Patton. They're going to be leading the line against England. Yeah. So Wakefield lost. Oh, dearie. Oh, you should have seen some of the things on Facebook. Bloody hell, it's all gone. They kept the coaches in after till all the cars were. St Helens are a scum of the earth club and all this. It's like, what? I can't believe Wakefield lost to a team who are quite good.
So Saints started well, 26-0.
Something like that.
Wakefield showed some resilience to hit back. That was their first away defeat of the season.
Yeah.
They're getting used to playing this week in, week out intensity that you have to at Super League level. They've got some injuries. Max didn't come back. I'm not sure that Wakefield should be hysterical about losing a game, and I'm not sure that says anything other than we said it, didn't we? Saints are a good side in the making. They're missing 1 or 2 players at the moment that mean they don't have that element of consistency. But we've ended up with the first part of the Good Friday battles is 1 against 2 and 3 against 4. It couldn't have worked out better.
It's the fixture computer. I wish I'd kept that clip of Darryl Powell talking about the fixture computer because I deleted it, but I'll bring it back for next week.
Now, Saints are you know,
they're all right,
they've got some really good young kids coming through. I think they're starting to develop a style and a way of playing that doesn't rely on those that aren't there anymore, which takes a little bit of time. And will be fine this year. Wakefield are just adjusting to Super League life.
What's he saying about the pre-match press conference? Paul Wellens. Here's a funny story for you, dear listener. When St Helens edited their video to put on Instagram, right? Because Instagram, the algorithm puts like the best picture. It was me. Until the media manager changed it to Paul Wellens. It should have been me. It should have been me.
Who was their media manager?
I know, bastard.
Ex of this parish, we should say.
Paul Wellens, not the ones who we think really are. Paul Wellens mentioned, about Lee Breer's working with the halfbacks and it's taking time to get there, and it will take time to get there. And now they've got a new combination. We don't know when Johnny Lomax, he might be back this way, I don't know. So we'll see what happens.
They're a decent team. And the Saints fans that have been getting on Paul Wellens' back, I still don't think it's deserved it.
When they win all the trophies.
Well, they won't be doing that. But
they've got time to rest and stuff. And
last year was not a good year for them, but there were some extenuating circumstances, and it hasn't actually done them long-term harm.
Erin is a Wakefield supporter. She's one of the sensible ones. The Red, White and Blue Army Facebook page was insufferable on Friday. They thought it was like 2023 again. Some of them think we're going to win everything like 2024, forgetting that,
I mean, the great thing in the Championship is you can rebuild. The bad thing is that you win virtually every game, and that becomes the norm then. That okay, entertain me. They're doing really well, Wakefield. They look a Super League team, which you don't always get when you get promoted. And subject to prevailing wind and injury, they'll be knocking on or around a playoff spot.
However, if it all goes wrong on Thursday, then hellfire and brimstone.
No. What, until they play each other again 2 weeks later at Magic Weekend?
Can't lose to Castle. Paul says, if Biomat was locked up, I hate what to think would happen to Tim Street. Maybe they would bring back hanging.
My particular bête noire of that is Chris Arkwright and Roy Haggerty.
But we're not glorifying.
No, we're not.
Not glorifying. It's like the past. It's like the olden days. Phil's mentioned one of the hosts of a West Tigers podcast that lost all their sponsors after saying Casey Badger shouldn't be a ref and should be in the kitchen. Well, that's why you've got
to be careful. You have a duty, a responsibility to make sure that the people that are broadcasting in your name, even if it's an in-house... I mean, the whole thing you were saying about can't speak going viral, that was an in-house video, so it is going to be picked up. Be very careful.
Someone's digitised that from VHS and put it on the internet. I'd love to know how it ended up there in the first place. I've got a load of Wakefield Club videos from the 90s. They're probably rotting away now, in fairness. But I don't think there was anything controversial in Wakefield versus Featherstone from 1993. Probably not, anyway. But you've got to be aware. I've learned things you're not. I don't mean offensive things. Obviously, that goes without saying. But there's things I've said in the past that I won't say now, because I know that if I say them, I'll get in trouble. I don't want to keep working. It's not compromising your beliefs or anything. Saints are only a 60-minute side, says Liz.
Yeah, but I think that
60 minutes were enough this week.
They're getting better.
The thing about people said about Leeds on Thursday, they didn't kill them off, but they did enough. They won the game. Yes.
They were very attritional in the first half, which gave them the platform to score points in the second half.
Right, we're only halfway through Super League, so this is going well.
Earn the right, as Brad Arthur continually says.
Before we get on to Saturday's game, should we get the Women's Challenge Cup out of the way?
Can do.
Sunday, York 54, Featherstone 6, London 0, Wigan 44. Saturday, different story. Sheffield 0, Leeds 104 after 60 minutes, because varying people say what happened. Don't know what happened.
Well, Sheffield were down to 9 players apparently.
But had loads of injuries before. Andrew Dobson told us a couple of weeks ago anyway. So.
Injury and unavailability.
Shouldn't happen, but one team's a top Super League team, the other team's in the Championship, so it happens. It happens, yeah. Wakefield beat Newcastle last year 100 odd nil in the 1895 Cup, so...
It exposes a flaw, which goes back to everything that was talked about the Women's Super League launch, of which you've recorded
it's all on the podcast.
Loads of interviews. We've got some stuff in there about the test match. There are going to be mismatches in the women's game because they're at different levels of development. The difference between the England team and Australia and the England team and Wales, there's a disparity there because of different rates of speed of development. It's the same within our domestic game, that the top 4 Super League teams, where all the best talent is concentrated, are going in one direction. The others cannot catch that up at the moment. So if you're going to pit them against each other, expect these results.
Yeah.
And the thing I don't understand is, yeah, it's fine having a group stage. How are you going to mitigate against these results? Because they're going to happen in group games in every one of those 4 groups. The other thing with that is, why are we having quarterfinals?
Because we know what the results of those games are going to be.
Why isn't it going straight to semi-finals?
Yeah. The more concerning result of the two is St Helens beating Warrington 102-0, and I think the friendly result pre-season was 60-odd or whatever. But at least St Helens play their games at their stadium where the men play as well, and the academy play. So, I think it's...
But what it shows is, as we found from the numerous people that we interviewed at that launch, is if we're serious about catching the Aussies or making a dent in a World Cup, 8 teams in Super League is too many. We have not got the talent yet.
Here's Emily Rudge to tell you about St Helens pre-season, which may have given you an indication of how they took the game against Warrington.
Long and hard. How tough has it been?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that of long and hard.
See, it's comedy. 102
but not for the podcast listeners.
No, I'm going to have to edit that in, aren't I? 102-0. Well done, Saints, for not stopping, because I've said in the past, dim distant past, they would have stopped.
But the problem with that is that how many of the Warrington / Sheffield players are now going to be put off thinking that they should continually play against sides like that? And it you got a quote from Lindsay Anfield saying that when some of her York stars came back from having been mauled in Las Vegas, that she had to put her arm around to convince some of them that they should keep playing on. Well, if we know we talk about duty of care in the men's game, there's a duty of care in the women's game, and this could have been avoided. We don't have to have these group stages.
But the problem is, Saints will play Warrington twice again in Super League, and
Nothing's
going to change, is it? That result's not going to change.
There are concerns in the women's game that at least 2 or 3 of the teams in Super League are going to really struggle. The clubs themselves are going to question the value of having a women's team, and it's not really development if you're just tagging them on to existing Super League clubs. If the footprint of the women's game is to have a London team representing the south of England, a Cardiff team representing all of Wales, is that a better bet than a Super League club saying we now have a women's team, but we don't really have the wherewithal to compete with the others, so we're not that bothered about it?
When Warrington players are leaving to go to Salford and Swinton, and we saw Cardiff beat them a couple of weeks ago. So this result and this scoreline is not a surprise. This is the problem. We knew it was going to happen. Yeah. And well, not 100.
Not between 2 Super League teams.
But go back to 2019, and I saw Castleford beat Wakefield in the Challenge Cup semi-final 100-0. Now, granted, this was before everyone cared about Women's Rugby League, and only the final was on TV that year on the red button, so we avoided that. But things haven't changed because those were 2 Super League teams.
Lindsay Anfield, who I think has been the double winning grand final coach, her opinion should be listened to, and she is of a mind that it doesn't do anybody any good to only really have to play one week in 3 and the rest of the time you're treading water. It doesn't do any good for breeding the top level talent that's going to compete at international level, it doesn't do any good for the teams they're playing against. So somebody needs to make some pretty radical decisions, either to change the format of the Challenge Cup and be realistic and honest about maybe you do have to go straight to semi-finals. I don't know. But also, what is the ongoing strategy for? And we know Tom Brindle's writing the next strategy for women. So there may be a bit of pain in the short term, but those seem like self-inflicted wounds this weekend.
I almost don't want to say, but 6-team Super League: Wigan, Leeds, St Helens, York, London, Cardiff. Maybe when there's another team strong enough, 7, because I think we can stand a Cardiff or a London.
Well, I think you'd look at Barrow and say that can be Cumbria. So
Yes,
we're not talking. We're not talking mergers. We're talking. You still be Barrow, but be representative of the best women's talent in the whole of Cumbria.
It's unfair of me to kick out Barrow when they've actually performed well last year. That's
But
a
I'm
good point.
just saying,
17.
if you're going to make them regional teams, because the talent pool needs to be concentrated.
Tim saying, have the top 4 clubs have their own competition and have top players distributed to other teams in a standard competition. So you have this incubator competition, they described it as, which is a phrase I don't understand. But
all of that needs looking at. Otherwise, you're constantly on the defensive about results like that.
Well, I had to explain it to someone the other day about how it was 80-0 at half time between Sheffield and Leeds.
Which
and you can't.
To be honest, that's a hell of a feat, because how do you have the ball long enough to score 80 points?
You can't explain it other than that. I had to explain it in a football analogy. The difference between the Women's Super League and the Championship is like the Premier League in football and 7th, 8th, 9th tier football. But you can't park the bus.
Well, and also you can't.
And it's not the criticism of the. I'm not having to go at the players or the coaches.
And the other thing is, it's the beginning of the season. This is part of their getting ready to play meaningful games in Super. They have to play their full strength teams.
And if clubs are only seeing it as they have to have a women's team because it's the done thing,
they get an IMG half point, which they don't. But
you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. Well, you are doing it for the wrong reasons. Just don't bother. If you're not going to bother doing it properly, whether that's financially or whatever.
I'm surprised at Warrington. I thought they would have seen the greater value and put more into the infrastructure.
Especially as we know, with everything that isn't the men's game. You're not paying players unless you want to. So the only costs you've got are things like equipment, buses, kit. If you can't get sponsors to cover that...
No, but I think the interesting thing as well is that the top teams are importing talent from Australia.
Well, I mean, that's...
Which is good.
And as Dennis Betts said, it was easier to sign players from Australia than sign players from other clubs.
But it can lead to an increase in the standard of the competition. But those Australian players, with the greatest respect, are not going to go to Huddersfield.
Amy Hardcastle, when she left Bradford, isn't moving to Huddersfield, is she? She's going to Saints, then back to Leeds and to Saints. Players aren't going to leave.
No.
And even the fringe players at say St. You could look at St Helens' squad. I'm not going to name names, but you can look at all the squads of the top 4 and think, well, that player would be a star at Huddersfield.
But some of them are starting to filter out now. So you're seeing some of those players playing for other clubs. But you need longer to develop more talent.
It's no use, says Paul, having a women's team if you don't back it up with a reserve side or development team.
Yeah, it's all
do
about
it right
how you run your club. I 100% agree with that.
I know there's all kinds of...
and I think that's as much with the men's side as it is the women's. It's this one club mentality. You cannot claim you are if you're only going to put your major resource in the men's running team.
I believe Sheffield are. I believe Wigan are.
Yeah. But Sheffield would admit that whilst it's been great to appear in the Challenge Cup, it's probably been a double-edged sword. They're not at that level.
Also on Saturday, Sheffield 12, Toulouse 34 in the Championship.
Yep.
And London Bulldogs 14, Batley Bulldogs 16.
With a try last minute. Alfie Dean trying the corner to win it.
The Bulldogs.
Last play of the game.
You can't write off the Bulldogs.
No, but the thing about that is you must support the Championship, even if you can't get to games that often. It is a competition where week on week you look at the fixture and go, oh yeah, Batley got beaten by 50 at Oldham. They can't possibly have a chance at London, and you go, oh, they've won at London. It's a brilliant competition.
Talking about this yesterday. York streamed their game yesterday. I think they had 2,500, 3,000 people watching. We had about 6 people watching me watching other streams.
But again, going back to the Championship, Doncaster beat Toulouse and then get
lose.
mullered at York.
York are showing their games. Why aren't... And we've got this... Super League Plus is a platform where we know now we can put games on there and charge people.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it. Proof of concept in the Challenge Cup. So why aren't we doing that? I know it would have been up against a game in Super League yesterday.
Or change the time, so it isn't.
But it can be done, so why aren't we doing it? Saturday Super League. I really... 7:05 already. I know. Warrington, well, there's been nothing to talk about, either.
I'll show.
It's been ridiculous, hasn't
As we came up the stairs, I said, there's nothing happening.
Nothing happening. Banging on about Salford and women and stuff. Well done, Salford's women, getting through to the next round of the Challenge Shield. Well done.
And Castlefords wheelchair team who won the Challenge Trophy, which is brilliant.
And they're a brand new team, aren't they? I think.
Brand new team,
so
but really well done.
Get them on the pitch celebrating. You know, won a trophy. Warrington 16, Hull FC 28. Hull having been battered by Hull Kingston Rovers last week. Back.
That was an astonishing first half.
John Cartwright, what has he done to change Hull's mentality around from being a team who would go into their shells to this team who are now... They've bounced back from being beaten at home on national TV. They're by their biggest rivals and come back and beat Warrington in the end, I think, quite comfortably. I know it's a 12-point margin, but that was comfortable. That was comfortable.
I think he's done 2 things. One is he's simplified everything. He's playing to their strengths rather than trying to make them something that they aren't. And the other thing is he and the people that are responsible for recruitment have bought guys who are winners. They may not be at the flush end of their career, but they are not going to accept second best. And it's not in the games, it's in training. They know what it takes to be a winner. They have been in their career in teams that have won things. And they brought that into... We've got a core of kids that are eager to learn. We're going to teach them ways they can... It's not... There's going to have to be more change, and there will be more recruitment at Hull, because that gap in the middle between being a very, very talented youngster who gained some tough love last year and being an experienced guy that... Asiata is playing exactly the role that they bought him for. I hope he sees out the season... without having to miss any games through injury, because his influence is massive. SASA is playing a different game this year. It's been simplified. You're the biggest prop that we've got. We want you to do this. We're going to make you fitter so that you can do it for longer. But don't worry. If you can see an offload, we're not going to stop you doing it. But actually, you are a rampaging beast. What we'd like you to do is be a rampaging beast, and it's working. And they'll make some more significant signings. They'll build on what they're doing. But that is a great comeback response, and they won it in the first half. The worry for Warrington is that how flat they were. Even Mark Sneed couldn't kick any goals.
Well, now did he miss those goals? Because everyone on the internet, because they had a better view than the touch.
I was listening on the
touch
radio.
Touch judge here. Right, is my goals. Right, hold on. Oh, they're broken. Got my wire up. So here's the goals. Touch judge here. Right.
Hang on.
But you're over there.
Hang on.
Touch judge. Put the touch judge there. But you're at home there. You've got a better view than the touch judge. Because that's what... And Rod Studd's nets, obviously.
But he's missing the goals didn't account for the fact that it was a really, really sluggish performance from Warrington. And the kind of performance where sometimes you do question, are they going to break the duck that they want to? I don't know. I mean, we have Warrington fans that will tell us in no uncertain terms that we're always downgrading Warrington's performances. I thought that was a poor opening half, considering what they were building on.
Knowing what we know, and knowing that, of course, as Mr. Still would say, any result is possible. Block it 2 1-4-7s in a match today. That's never happened before. Anything's possible, apart from obviously in the Women's Challenge Cup of the weekend. Anything's possible, but in a grand final, Wigan versus Warrington,
you would still
the
question.
mortgage of your house that you've bought a rugby league club with is been put on. You can't do
Yeah,
that.
you're not going to win every game every week, but you were playing a team at home that were coming off arguably their most intense game of the season, where they'd frozen at the start and came back and learnt from that, and you were too easily picked apart in the first half for people to say you're a genuine contender at the very top of the league. Yeah, they'll make the playoffs. There's no problem with that, but there's an ingredient still missing.
Diddle-a-dun, breaking transfer news on Phil. Salford have signed Jake Fewlis on loan. So there you go. When's Dion Cross leaving? And who else is going? Danny McDonald is at Oldham.
Chris Atkin is going.
Chris Atkin's going to Castleford, isn't he? It seems to take a couple of weeks after we find out these players are going for them to go, like Colin Watkins. 25 grand, apparently. Should have sent him some old kit or something, or some gold posts.
They sent Toby Warren as well, don't forget him. Oh, yeah. He was part of the deal.
First half, as good a 40 minutes as I've seen us play in a while, says Paul. Still not an 80-minute team yet, but the improvement in our mentality is incredible. True leaders now guiding the younger players.
Absolutely.
Herman now helps by having Asiata and Knight, who's been another good signing, of course. Has been a solid signing. Hardaker playing in second row. Didn't get the post-match praise I feel his performance deserved.
Yeah.
Is the whole situation, says another Paul, not a new case of a new owner and director of rugby more than anything. Well, we're going to praise Richie Myler because he'll get upset.
It's also to do with the fact that whoever is deciding on recruitment is signing the right. Liam Knight is a classic example. We've got Liggy Sow's got a season-ending injury early on. We need a prop. Because they are now spending to the salary cap, because they've got a new owner, they have the money. But somebody needs to say, and it might very well be Richie Myler, Liam Knight's a guy that can come in and do a job for us, and clearly is doing. And there are other clubs towards the bottom of the league this year that would love the ability to do that.
I bet if there was a repeat of the tunnel meeting of last year, that Mr. Myler would be quite happy to see Mr. Burgess again.
I think it'd be really interesting now to see how Hull go in the derby, because effectively they've nothing to lose. It's a free hit for them in many respects after the Challenge Cup defeat. Hull are coming off a loss. You'd like to think, if you're a Hull fan, that they're going to start with a much greater intensity than they did in that cup tie, and you'd secretly be thinking to yourself, we've got a real chance.
Warrington look bad again, says Kevin. No chance of breaking the duck. Not enough winning mentality in the team. You can't win every week, but you should at least perform every week.
Yeah, I think that would be I was listening to a radio commentary of it, so I didn't see it, but it just sounded that Warrington were broken down far too easily in the first half.
I've been robbed, by the way, in the media tipping competition. I finished second in the first mini-league, despite having the same number of points, because I picked less correct picks. Gutted. Don't think I win any money now, so that's and I will win some money, so that's positive, but robbed. Can't believe I was top of the league going into the end of this group. Mainly because I picked Lee to beat Castleford. 20 points to... I mean, I picked Warrington. If I'd have picked Hull, I would have finished top, but I picked Warrington instead, so that shows my faith in the Burgess effect. Castleford 6, Lee 20. This was a rugby league game where Lee could have, Leeds on Thursday, won by more, but they didn't, but they won. And I did back Ipape to score, and he scored, so it was good because he pushed Robbie Mulhern out of the way, which was funny. But it was just a game of rugby league, and it wasn't terrible. It just existed.
I've only seen the highlights. I'd find it very hard to comment. I think Castleford know where they are. If they do get the likes of Tom Amone and Chris Atkin, that's going to make a big difference to them. They're just struggling with the recruitment that they've been able to do because of been hamstrung by the finances at the club. Lee seem to be picking up injuries, but are doing a job. They have bigger fish to fry in the Challenge Cup, I think, where they're now. I think, do the bookies make Lee and Hull KR
I'd imagine they would do.
Favourites to get to Wembley
again? Oh dear.
So yeah, interesting. And Lee's game this weekend is that rehearsal of the Challenge Cup semi-final with Warrington.
In the Championship on Sunday.
Because they've always been rivals.
Yeah, big rivals. It's the Alex Murphy derby. In the Championship, Oldham 30, Featherstone 28. Woof, what a barn burner this was. And Featherstone...
Last minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they were leading for a long time in that game and didn't come away with the victory. So
Featherstone improving now that they've got half-backs.
Yeah.
They'll take some confidence for the 1895 Cup semi-final on that performance, I would have thought.
Widnes 12, Barrow 37.
Another great result for Barrow. Although I'm told not Widnes's finest 80 minutes.
And York 66, Doncaster 0. So again, the Mark Applegarth effect.
But that's
is back.
massive. You know, after what was it? After 3 rounds, everybody was saying gone. Now they're saying
Sack him.
back.
Super League. Luke Robinson, Danny Maguire. In the same position as other coaches have been in the past. You can't turn down the job.
You can't. Nor can you do the job if you haven't got the resources to do it.
I know Huddersfield have got injuries.
They've got a ridiculous amount of injuries. And more than that, every game they go out, they get more injuries. You know, Fenton Rodgers went off after about 5 minutes. It's like, we're really struggling to put a pack together at the moment. We'll put Fenton up front and he can start the game for us, and he's gone. And then Bill Leyland, we've got him on loan. We need to see how good he is. He's gone. It's like... watching that game, which let's be honest, wasn't hugely entertaining. You just got the sense that there wasn't enough power up front for the Giants to match what is one of the biggest physical props in the game, and the backs, whilst they never stopped trying, were just too small.
Again, as much as as they've got injuries. They've got a large amount of their salary cap in a 30-odd-year-old prop forward who's been battered in the NRL for years. And it's not a knock on that player.
That's a choice. No, that's a choice. But the injuries are a concern.
Yeah.
And a genuine mitigating factor.
They've obviously got good young players coming through at Huddersfield and have done for the years, but their signings...
I think the only crumb of comfort for Luke Robinson is he can look at what happened to Lee last year. They had a similar amount of injuries, couldn't get a settled team on the park. They won 2 games in 14, so the first half of the season could barely get started. But when they got everybody back, they were almost unbeatable. Got to the semi-finals. So the season isn't over yet, but he has to get his best players back on the field, and the longer that takes, the less chance they're going to have of making any impact on the season. And they've got to stick by him. They've got to.
As Phil says, it was a tough watch. We were discussing favourite crisps on the watch along. Liam Perrin's apparently your favourite crisps.
Well, this is what they're not yet, because I haven't found any, but I've been told they are available. I will be searching some on the way home.
Rivals round. # copyright TM Super League. Rugby League commercial. Starts with Wakefield versus Castleford on Thursday. Followed on Friday at 12:30 by Hull FC versus Hull KR, Wigan versus St Helens, and Leeds versus Huddersfield. You can watch all those 3 games on Sky, or you can watch me watch them on the internet instead, with our unique, pithy brand of commentary.
Will you be having Liam Perrin's crisps as you watch?
I'm going to have something, aren't I? I can't just sit there all day. We've got the test card though ready to put up. Featherstone play Huddersfield in the Women's Challenge Cup on Friday night. So that'll be interesting. After Featherstone men have played York in the Paul Cook Derby, as it's not known.
You'll be looking forward to that.
1 o'clock on Friday, Batley versus Hunslet. Is that because of the floodlights?
Not Batley Dewsbury. Thought it was Rivals round.
I know. Well, Dewsbury in League One, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot.
But what we do know about Batley versus Hunslet, of course, is great pies.
Yep.
Great pies.
Yep. So good.
So good. That's what the song says, yeah. No.
Wilson's pies.
Enjoy the pies at Batley. Barrow versus London. Rivals. That's a bit of a long trip for London, isn't it? We got Doncaster, Sheffield, South Yorkshire.
Rivals.
Dars versus Dingles. Halifax versus Bradford. Rivals.
Yeah. Derby. Yeah.
So if we promote Bradford to Super League, we'll get Leeds Bradford back. Who do Halifax play then?
Huddersfield.
Batley.
No, they play themselves, don't they? Because they're...
Widnes Oldham.
Yeah.
Don't know what derby that is. And Featherstone York as mentioned. League One, Dewsbury Newcastle. big derby. Rams and Thunder. Rochdale Swinton.
That's a derby.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's not Oldham,
There's a
but
lot
it's
of
close
rivalry.
enough.
The Martin Kellner,
Workington Whitehaven, definitely.
one of the biggest derbies.
Keighley Gull.
Yeah.
Cougars Vikings.
Yeah.
And that's
So
it.
no Midlands Hurricanes.
No.
I
On
thought they were playing North Wales Crusaders
they are on Saturday,
Saturday. Right.
along with Cardiff versus St Helens in the Women's Challenge Cup. Good luck to our team, Cardiff.
No bias there. Go
No.
Cardiff.
Lee Warrington and Catalan Salford.
Yep.
Sunday, Lee Sheffield in the Women's Challenge Cup and Barrow London, and some NRL games. Then Monday, no rugby because we don't do that anymore on Easter.
Would you?
Player
Not,
welfare.
I mean, we said this last year, and we'll say it again. But would you not have the Super League games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the Championship and League One games Sunday, Monday, so that we could all take in our own teams and a game from another competition?
It made more sense.
Would we not do that?
Yeah.
Why would we not do that? So let's say we're in West Yorkshire, so let's say you particularly wanted to go watch Wakefield and Castleford on the Thursday, but you thought, oh, Halifax Bradford, that sounds like a really interesting 80 minutes. I'll go to that on Easter Sunday.
Get to Dewsbury, it's on bus. So go to Dewsbury,
But do you know what I
Newcastle.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like-
The game at Huddersfield was a painful watch, says Andrew.
It was.
And I've seen a few games like that, being a Dewsbury Rams fan. We'll be there watching them against Newcastle. Might win that one, so it'll be alright. We spoke about Salford. We can't do Huddersfield as well as Salford because it's just the same thing. Tigers Eels on Monday, says Phil.
Okay.
Makes sense, Phil. That's why, Kevin. That's why we.
Have you heard? I mean, I know you will have heard because you obviously keep your eye on all things rugby league.
I know Penrith and rubbish. That's about all I know.
Yeah, but
Oh, Dom
have
Young.
have you
People
heard
don't like
about
Dom Young anymore.
the Good Friday game
What's this one?
between Canterbury, who are top
London
of the league,
Bulldogs. Yeah.
and the Rabbitohs, Wayne Bennett's Rabbitohs,
Oh yeah. I've heard
which
of
is
him.
being played on Good Friday.
Yep.
70,000 fans expected.
Wow.
They
Any
got-
particular reason, or the?
Well, it's captured the imagination. It's,
Right.
but it's part of the Canterbury revival. It's the Easter holiday weekend. They'd sold 60,000 tickets and they've given away. Well, they've not given it. They are now selling for the remainder, probably extra 10,000, $10 tickets to get kids there to experience what it's like to have 60,000 in the stadium. Brilliant initiative. But that looks like it's going to break a modern day record for an attendance fee.
First versus fifth. Canterbury, the Halifax of the NRL. 5 wins from 5.
Yep.
The Dolphins win again, didn't they? They're good now. Well, getting better. Above Penrith. But not Parramatta. When they're going to kick Parramatta out, they're no good. They're rubbish.
70,000 though for a club game.
Is that some kind of record in the modern
Well,
era?
in the modern era,
yeah. Because I know people have said, I guess going full circle back to the Test matches, even in the olden days, were there ever 80,000 people watching?
Not often.
No, because of course we go back to the 70s when 4 people watched at Wembley, weren't they?
The post-war, Second World War years, we got huge crowds. But I'm just saying, Good Friday, 70,000.
So that's on at 7:05. So you can watch that. Then the Dolphins
Yeah.
Melbourne, and then I'm not getting up at 7 o'clock to.
Funnily enough, and it's going to happen again for Magic Weekend because their Magic Weekend is
Oh,
the
yes.
same as ours. You will get wall-to-wall rugby league. I am guessing that this is exactly what the NRL would want in terms of content. That you sit there on a weekend, or in our case, Good Friday, you watch 2 games from the NRL, 3 games from Super League. That's your day of rugby league. Mr. Broadcaster, Mrs. Broadcaster.
So they say Magic Weekend.
We want your money.
I
Magic
got-
Weekend, you can get
Yeah.
15 games, I think, across. Because this is the weekend that Sky show all of the
All of
games.
them.
So you're going to get all of our games and all of their games in one weekend.
So I can sit at Cyril's bar in Magaluf and see all of the rugby.
Yeah.
Make sure they put it
You'll
on.
never leave the stool.
No. And I've got.
Imagine how much sangria you'll be drinking.
So there's 3 games on actual proper Sky this week, isn't there? So at one point later in the season, there'll only be 1 game on in the week, and they'll all go, why is there not 2 games on? And people will write articles saying, why is there only 1? Here's why. It revealed why there's only 1 game on Sky this week, because there's other games on. Do you think Lewis Dodd will get a game when fit, or will he be shipped straight back over here, says Kevin?
He'll get a game when fit.
Can't give up on him that quickly, can they?
They won't give up on him.
And then he'll sign for Huddersfield. Bit harsh. Oh, someone asked how Scully is. Have we spoken to him recently?
All right. Yeah.
He should be happy against Leeds one.
He does like it when Leeds win. He'll be at the Leeds Hall of Fame dinner at the beginning of May, because he's in the Hall of Fame. He will be there. He's all right.
He's in many Hall. He's in about 3 Hall of Fames, I think. So
that's one he knows that he's in.
The Balmain Hall of Fame, yeah. The Town Hall Tavern. On that bombshell. He'll play on Friday, says Phil.
He'll be Scully. I don't think he will.
Play for Hunslet. Desperate now. We'll be back on Tuesday next week because it's Bank Holiday Monday.
It is.
Shop shut, so we can't get into the studio.
Well, we could.
Well, we could, but because I'm going to work elsewhere and get paid time and a half.
Fox's Biscuits.
Fox's Biscuits. So now we just need some pies, don't we?
Yeah. I can't believe that they were showing pictures of pie and peas from the meeting and not
biscuits.
paying homage
Fox's
to their
Biscuits.
own sponsor.
So go out and buy the magazine, read all the words Simon Johnson said.
Yes, created a bit of a ripple of interest.
Yeah. Read something that I actually think is funny that I've written. I mean, I couldn't, but I had to check before we started that I'd written something funny, but I did, especially because you can make your own jokes on afterwards about it. And the John Wilkin paradox.
Rustling in the background is me
Biscuits.
opening the biscuits.
So should we let Emily Rudge play us out or Ronnie the Rhino?
Oh, I think it's Emily's work.
Emily
isn't
Rudge. So we'll see you next week on
it?
Tuesday.
Enjoy your Easter.
Yeah. Eat loads of eggs. Gamble responsibly. And here's Emily Rudge. Good night. Oh, hang on, where is she? Here she is.
Long. How tough has it been?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that of long and hard.